Hey, small business people and lovers of good stories in general. Welcome to episode 24 of Small Business War Stories. This episode was really cool. I was in the Soul of America tour and I stopped by Springfield, Missouri. And I sat down with Mel Millsap, who is starting she's been doing it for a while, but she has an urban farm in Springfield, Missouri. So she's in what's historically been the second poorest neighborhood in Springfield. And she decided to make a difference in her community by starting this farm within the city limits. And she talks about all the things she had to go through, all the regulations and permits with the city. She has a really great energy and a great soul, and I think you'll get a great feeling of triumph over adversity through her story. And I think what she's doing is really, really important and can actually make a big difference in a lot of different places across the country. So I'm excited for Mel to share her story here on Small Business War Stories. And this episode was part of the Soul of America tour, which means that it's sponsored by Tecovas Boots. Tecovas Boots, it's Tecovas. I wore them every single day of the Soul of America tour all over the country. Got lots of compliments, very well-made boots. They sell directly to you, so the prices are a lot better than the boots that you buy at the store. You can head over to tecovasboots.com. That's TecovasBoots.com, tecovasboots.com. And the episode is also brought to you by Impact Crates. Impact Crates are made in the USA. They're strong, they're safe and secure, and they are collapsible. So I traveled with one every single day of the Soul of America tour with Muddy Waggers, and it was great because I could collapse it and I could transport it all by myself. And if you use code MUDDY20, that's MUDDY20, you get 20% off your Impact Crate. And the episode is also brought to you by Badger Mapping. Badger Mapping is a field mapping sales app. So if you have sales reps or if you have a sales territory yourself, you can put in all of your points and it helps you plot the best route. So I used it in the Soul of America tour to map my route around the country. And if you sign up for Badger Mapping and you tell them that you found out about Badger on Small Business War Stories, they will give you 2 free months. And it's definitely worth trying. It was very effective for me. And of course, every single episode of Small Business War Stories is brought to you by the company that I started, and that's called Proven. Proven.com is a leading small business hiring tool. We make small business hiring easy. You don't have to go posting to all the job boards. You can post your job to us, and it goes over 100 job boards. We have different agreements with folks, and it makes the recruiting process easy and painless. And we are on your side. We're all about small business. We're a small business ourselves, and we really care about helping you as a small business hire more easily. And you get a free trial. Go check it out. Without further ado, I do want to get into the episode. Again, this is a really amazing story from Mel Millsap of Urban Roots Farm in Springfield, Missouri for episode 24 of Small Business War Stories. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. And we are live here in Springfield, Missouri, and I'm sitting here with Mel from Urban Roots Farm. Welcome to the show, Mel.
Thank you.
It is a beautiful, beautiful location that you have here, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second here. But yeah, it's really exciting. Tell me more. I'm not familiar with the concept of urban farming. So what does it mean that we are here in the middle of Springfield, Missouri, and there is a farm?
There is a farm. Urban Roots Farm is a very unique location because we are in West Central neighborhood, which encompasses the downtown, the square of Springfield. It's a pretty large neighborhood, but it's also it's the second lowest income neighborhood in Springfield.
Okay.
So it's pretty diverse.
Okay.
You know, the apartments, the housing, the big, skyrise I call them skyrise, but they're not. You know,
Okay.
they're like 20 stories. But
Sure.
for Springfield, it's big. And of course, the colleges. So to have a farm smack dab in the middle of it all is very different. Of course, you know, looking outside, you don't see the white picket fence and the big red barn.
Right.
Because we can't do that here. You see a lot of concrete, you see a lot of houses, you hear a lot of cars, you know.
So how did
life.
I am very curious. How did you end up doing this? Like what?
Purely by accident.
Okay.
So we've actually lived here in our house in West Central for almost 15 years.
Wow.
And we bought the property next door in 2009, started farming it in 2010.
Okay.
When we bought our house 15 years ago, the plan was to buy a cheap house close to downtown because downtown was really growing and just reviving itself.
Yeah.
And we thought it'd be a great investment. You know, we'll buy this house,
Okay.
we'll fix it up, we'll flip it.
Sure.
We'll
Did your
make
husband?
some
So
money.
I came from interviewing Jeff at Mother's, and your husband works there.
He
Did your
does.
husband work there at the time?
No, actually,
Okay.
he's only worked there for like 5 or 6 months.
Oh wow.
So
Okay, that's pretty new.
He and I were farming together that entire time before.
Wow.
So, yeah, I've had to survive without him on the farm lately, and that's a little rough.
I bet.
But yeah, so we bought the house, and then we thought that we would flip it and buy land and move to the country, maybe near a river. And
Okay.
we both really enjoy the wilderness, and I knew I wanted to farm, so I knew I wanted some land. And then just a turn of events happened, and I kept staring at this 1.5 acres next door and wondering, I don't know, what would that be like
If you started growing stuff
we
there.
just stayed here and did this, you know?
Wow.
And at the time, my brother-in-law had started a farm, and I was helping him.
Is that farm nearby?
It is.
Okay.
It's north of Springfield.
Okay.
And so I helped him get started, and all the while thinking, oh, where's my farm?
Yeah.
And I heard about some urban farms in Kansas City and St. Louis.
Yeah.
And went up and visited and thought, wait a second, you mean I could actually farm and bike downtown for a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is
this
beautiful.
is kind of the lifestyle I want. But then also just being here, it's the lifestyle that a lot of the people in the neighborhood needed, especially the kids.
Okay.
Because they're never going to get to go outside of the city to visit a farm.
Okay.
And I think most of the people in my generation and younger had a parent or a grandparent that had a farm,
Right.
you know, so we had that connection. And a lot of the kids now, you know, there's that gap, and the gap's only getting bigger and bigger between having a connection or a relative that farms and gardens.
Yeah.
And here in West Central, you don't see a lot of it. And so it kind of became a mission, you know, to us as well to think, well, if we had a farm where people work and live and they play, then maybe they'll just get something out of it by walking by it every day.
Yeah.
You know, it's accessible to them.
How do the neighbors feel about it?
Most of the neighbors really like it.
Okay.
Every now and then we'll get somebody that gets upset about this, that, and the other, but nothing major.
Okay.
Honestly, the kids in the neighborhood love it the most. In the
Okay.
summertime, there's this little group of kids that, you know, they're a little biker gang, and they ride over here and they call it Narnia.
Wow.
And they just hang out. Like, it's a safe place, you
That's
know?
cool. That's cool. That sounds like, I mean, that's like stories they're going to tell until the day they die, right?
Absolutely.
As kids. Like,
Yeah.
remember the farm in the middle of the city? Remember we used to call it Narnia? That
I
is
know,
awesome.
I
That's
know.
awesome.
And we get a lot of people over here that want to volunteer, that live in West Central neighborhood, and you know there is a lot of substance abuse, and that's unfortunate. And I have a place in my heart for folks that struggle with that, and so it's nice when they do come over. I usually only see them when they're sober and feeling good.
Yeah.
But I think the farm also makes them feel better, you know.
Yeah.
And then when they kind of go downhill and are struggling again, they don't ever come see me. So it is a bummer, but it's also one of those things where, I can be there for them when I can, and I can give them a place and some food, and, they like to work. It feels good to work. Oh, yeah, it feels good for them. It doesn't matter if, there's just a subconscious thing that happens to your emotions, I think, when you're working in the dirt.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, I've experienced it myself because I feel like it's kind of a sacred place and a connection with Mother Nature, and you can actually see the work that you're doing. Whether if you're pulling weeds and you look back and all of a sudden the row of onions is gorgeous and the onions are glowing, and before all you saw was, a few rows of onions and some weeds in between, and so it's just like satisfaction immediately. And then also the fact that when you're pulling food out of the ground, when you're harvesting it, there's again like a pride, I can do this feeling, that I think that maybe people are aware of it when they're over here volunteering and helping, and maybe they aren't quite aware of it, but the fact that they keep wanting to come back and enjoy it and get their hands dirty is something's happening.
Interesting. So you're helping a lot of the folks in the community that need it.
I think so. I mean, if they need it.
Have you worked with the city at all to get grants for that kind of thing?
I haven't. We've worked with the city a lot because actually, the farm, what we wanted to do was completely illegal.
Okay.
Whenever we started.
Tell me more about that. Outlaw farm.
Yeah. Well, we decided to ask for permission, and that question turned into an 8-month conversation with planning and zoning and building and development and city council meetings.
Was this zoned residential before?
It's still zoned residential. Okay. But what happened was when we went and told them what we wanted to do, and they were like, oh, I'm sorry, you can't have a farm in the city. You can't have chickens, bees. You're talking about, growing a lot of vegetables and then selling it. Like so that's
you have vegetables, chickens, and bees?
Yes.
Okay.
They were like, well, surely nobody else is going to want to do this. So maybe we should just look at rezoning your piece of property. And we were like, I don't think so. I think you're going to see people wanting to do this all over the city. Like, community gardens are going to start popping up. Hopefully more urban farms pop up.
Okay.
So why don't we look at just changing the zoning laws citywide? Why not?
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, well, why not? Let's take a look at it. So that's one of the beautiful things about
cool.
living in a small town.
I'm surprised that sounds remarkably easy based on my experience with politicians and government.
I know, and that's the media at the time definitely painted our. They painted it as like a fight.
Of course,
this young couple is fighting to have a farm in the city. But really, it was a beautiful experience to work with our local government. And
that we got to put that a quote
and frame
right? It at City Hall.
I know, seriously. And I remember walking out of, I think it was like the first or second meeting with planning and zoning, and I was so nervous, but it went really well. And I remember walking out and looking at my husband and going, I feel like an adult for the first time. Like, I feel like I can make a change, and a change that'll affect some people. And I don't know that it really has. I mean, it's affected me and it's affected my family. So, but yeah, they ended up amending the entire zoning.
So now anybody
citywide,
that wants to can
have a farm.
So it's
in
not
the
just
city.
you didn't just impact your own proverbial lot, but you improved everybody else.
Yeah, they decided to break it up into 3 different divisions depending on if you're in a low density residential or commercial or whatever your zoning area is, and then they just wrote in agricultural laws for that.
Okay.
And so we are allowed to now have the farm. We can have our memberships in our CSA. We can
What does CSA
sell
mean?
for wholesale. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. It's really a horrible acronym, but basically it's subscription farming.
Okay.
So people buy a share. We sell, we do a summer season and a winter season, and people sign up, and it's a 24-week long season. They pay us to be their farmer.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
How come I've never heard of this before?
I don't know, but you should look into it. It's fantastic.
And it also ensures your cash flow and revenue stream.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to worry about rot or about like not selling out your produce.
It gives us the money we need. We ask for 30% up front, and most of them do. Some CSAs, you can set it up however you want. But we ask for 30% up front, and then they can pay it off over the 6 months.
Yeah.
But what that does is it gives us a little bit of money for seeds and water.
I
and
bet. Well, your cash flow management
and
changes completely.
Absolutely. It allows us to budget. And it's also a shared risk, which is a beautiful thing, because they're basically saying, here you go, here's my money. I trust you to grow my food the best you can. However, if something happens and there's a crop failure or something, then they're in it with us. They experience it, and I tell them about it, and we work through it. But so far, this will be our 7th season, or our 7th year. So I guess that's technically 13 seasons with the CSA.
That is wild.
And so far, we've had some tough times, but
tell me about some of the challenges. I was going to say, this sounds incredible, but I'm sure that it hasn't been all rainbows and roses.
No,
tell me about some of the challenges and how did you overcome
them? Some of the challenges with the CSA have been because we grow year round. So the winter CSA is a little sketchy sometimes. Our winters have been pretty mild lately, but there's always that the fear of whenever you're trying to grow a lot of greens and it's 12 degrees and cloudy for multiple days, and you're just out there like babying them along, doing everything you can to keep them from freezing, which they do freeze. But if the sun comes out, then they thaw. And we pick specific crops, to make it through those times.
Okay.
So we're pretty picky about that. We know what we can and can't plant.
Okay.
But yeah, I've had to send emails out to 30 families and say, I was planning on harvesting 7 vegetables for you this week, and I'm only going to have 4, and I'm really, really sorry, And sometimes that's because something was froze too long and didn't make it. And sometimes that's because, maybe it was frozen on harvest day, and you can't pick it when it's frozen.
Oh.
And so then you got to kind of move that around a little bit and play with
Well,
it.
that sounds a little better.
Yeah.
Than losing the crop.
We haven't had anything horrible, thank goodness.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. Nothing catastrophic yet.
Cool. So educate me a little bit. So what is the difference in terms of managing these challenges, and actually pretty much any aspect of farming, when you are doing it in an urban environment versus when you're say out outside of town in a rural area?
Well, I've never been a rural farmer.
Okay.
But I am living in Springfield, Missouri, and so I'm pretty familiar with I don't know how you can live down here and not be familiar with big open fields of corn and cows and soy.
Yeah.
But, I think the biggest difference, besides just the space, the environment itself, is that on any farm, you're going to have piles. Like, you're going to have a compost pile, and you're going to have a metal pile, and you're going to have things, that maybe you don't need right now, but you should salvage and save because you'll need it later pile.
Yeah. And those are not visually attractive.
No, they don't look good. And so trying to keep it, aesthetically pleasing when you're in the city is difficult. Hiding those messes is difficult.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see them. So you're doing a good job at least.
Thanks. I'll show you later.
Yeah, exactly.
And honestly, also just having the space to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So you got to get really creative there. The other difference is, I own my land,
right.
But for what I paid for that property, I could have bought a lot more land outside of town.
That makes
sense. So that's a huge difference. Our setup is very unique because we also have 8 apartments running along the west side of the farm. So as long as we have 6 of the 8 apartments rented, it'll pay for the mortgage of the land, and then our produce is our profit.
Oh, interesting.
And so most urban farms you'll find on borrowed property, or like a lot of times you could get the government property and do a low long-term lease.
So after you worked with the government to change the rules, did anybody else start doing this in Springfield?
Actually, there isn't another urban farm yet like ours. Okay. I know of a few of them that are trying to start up, and I'm super excited to find out and see.
Yeah.
Because we do a lot of education stuff over here as well, and tours, and
I'm sure you can host a class at the community college about how to do it. Have you thought about that?
Well, I haven't hosted a class on how to start an urban farm, but we get tours from all of the colleges and high schools and elementaries over here multiple times a year. And
you get crazy guys from Austin driving up here to interview you.
We do, and I love it. Like, that's one of the coolest things, though. I think you would consider me an extrovert, but just the people we've met through this experience has just been amazing. The relationships that have been built. I feel like I've had a pretty fortunate life, but this is by far the best thing that I have ever done.
That's amazing.
It's been so exciting, and the people are it. Obviously, I'm a produce farmer, and if people don't believe in me and trust me to grow their food, I wouldn't be doing this. I can't do this.
Right.
So
it makes you feel connected to the land and to the community, and you get to design the life that works for you.
Absolutely.
That sounds pretty cool.
It is really cool. I think I'm spoiled.
But you put a lot of work. You worked hard to do this, so you deserve the credit. That's great.
It is a lot of hard work, and it's interesting because we also have an apprenticeship program on the farm.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, people that are interested in becoming an urban farmer, they can apply, and we constantly we try to have 2 apprentices on the farm at all times, and they live here on the farm in one of the apartments.
Wow.
And all of their expenses are paid for while they're here working with us, and they get a stipend. We eat breakfast, lunch together. We work together
amazing.
Every day.
How do people apply for this?
And they just go to our website.
Okay, which is
urbanrootsfarm.com.
Okay.
And you can click on jobs and scroll down to apply. And
do you have to be from Springfield, or you
absolutely
can be...
not. We had a guy from New York City here.
Wow.
We've had a guy from Columbia here.
There you go.
We've had Ohio.
So if you're interested in coming and learning
absolutely
about urban
I would
farming,
love it.
Mel would love to have you. That is incredible.
Yeah. And of course we get the applications in, and there's kind of an interview process there, but
it's you gotta.
But we love it, and I think there is no better way to learn about if you're curious about doing this and really interested, there's no better way than to do an apprenticeship. You jump in, you help me with marketing, you help me with accounting, you help me with
That's
growing,
way better
planning.
than a community college class, by the way. That's my ideas are puny compared to your amazing execution. Okay.
And it's good, just hands-on. We also get interns from the colleges over here.
Cool.
And we have a couple of those all the time, and it's awesome to get ag students, in, and of course they're book smart. They know the bugs. They can identify the weeds. They've got
but they
great
haven't dealt
skills.
with the bugs.
And then they get out there in the field, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so much more than I thought it was." There's so many variables, and And you
haven't
can
dealt with the piles.
romanticize it, you know?
Yeah.
People tend to do that these days. Like, being a farmer, you know, there's a lot of, like...
Country songs about it.
Yeah. Like, it just sounds so wonderful and romantic. But, man, you gotta be able to put in the hours and break your back.
And get your boots dirty.
It doesn't matter if it's raining or snowing or 100 degrees. Like, you're out there and you're working hard. And... it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But...
well, so what percentage of the people that come, you know, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to do this program walk away and be like, whoa, this was cool, but, you know, not me?
You know, we've actually only had a couple people walk away and say, I don't think I'm interested in that, you know? Recently, actually, my first employee, she was an intern with us for a full year, and then I ended up hiring her on as my field manager, and she was with me for 2 years after that, and now she's started her own business where she installs gardens, design, and maintains them for people in their own backyard, you know?
That's cool.
It is cool. And it's neat to just see, they kind of become like, I don't know, when you live together and you work together for a full year, you have a bond, you know? And so I like to keep tabs on everybody and see where they are and what they're doing. And most of them have all started a business.
That's awesome. That's like a tree putting out seeds. I mean, not to stretch out the metaphors too far.
There's a lot of those when it comes to
I was gonna ask you, do you have any insider corny jokes, like farming jokes?
Oh my gosh. Most of them have just been, I don't know, they're really corny.
Go ahead. Give us your best corny joke.
Okay, well, this one came from one of my CSA members, but so we grow pea shoots a lot. Have you ever had a pea shoot?
I've had a pea shoot.
They're amazing.
They're good.
And so now every time that I go out to cut the pea shoots, I can't help but say, pea shoots, he scores.
Wow. There you go. There you go, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, you delivered. That's incredible.
Endless, you know, I don't know.
That's
There's
incredible.
A lot.
That is awesome. And what are some of the oddest and wackiest things you've seen? I'm sure you come across a lot of really interesting stuff here.
Oh, man. Oddest or wackiest or both? I mean, well, you got to be careful. I mean, like I said, we're pretty urban. And the thing with Springfield, you know, I guess I have to say this in terms of, you look at Kansas City and St. Louis, big cities, right?
Sure.
It's not hard to find the urban lifestyle there. And you think Springfield, like, really? I mean, I grew up in south side of Springfield, and I didn't know until I moved over here that there was this more of an urban lifestyle, you know?
Yeah.
People that just, they walk, they bike, they, you know, and of course it's becoming more and more of an attractive lifestyle. But for a long time, there's a lot of families that do this because they have to, not because they want to.
Right.
You know? So just learning and dealing with theft has been interesting.
Tell me about
that.
that.
Like, we haven't had a ton, but you know, they'll show up and check out the place, and we kind of figure that we talk to everybody. Like, we don't turn our back on anybody. And so I think just having a presence and being in the field and always letting them know that you're there and you're watching, and calling them out on it or telling them, you know, I don't think you're welcome here. And that's hard, but you really got to trust your gut. And that's a difficult situation for me to get into sometimes. And then sometimes, you know, they'll just flat out say, I'm sorry, I just need some food. And if they say that, I will send them away with bags and bags of food. But yeah, just kind of navigating the folks that walk onto the property.
Wow.
And at the same time, you know, there's beautiful moments too. Like, whenever we were putting the plastic on our greenhouse for the first time, at the time there was this old man and woman that lived in a couple of the apartments. They didn't live together, but they were neighbors, and they lived there when we took over the property. And so they would sit on the front porch and just watch us work all day long. I mean, then they would just make fun of us, but they were super sweet about it, just like, you guys are wearing me out just watching you. Da, 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 da. And the woman was on oxygen. She wasn't very healthy, and she had a lot of stuff she was fighting against with her heart. And so we're out there one day, and we're putting on the plastic, and the wind picks up, and we're just like, oh my gosh, we're going to lose it, like struggling to just hold the plastic down while we can get the wiggle wire in. And all of a sudden, we're like, somebody had the other side of the greenhouse, and we're like, what was that? And that little old lady had gotten up off her porch, walked over there with her oxygen, and just grabbed that plastic and was like putting her entire body into it to help us out. And, it didn't fly away. We got it attached. It was fantastic. But it was just like one of those aha moments where you're like, okay, like, they care and they love this, and we are making a difference for them,
That's
because
awesome.
And after that we sat down and thanked her, and she was like, no, thank you. I just feel like she lived here for like 6 years before we took over, and she was like, it just felt like this part of the neighborhood was just forgotten. Like the landlords wouldn't even come over and fix things, and to just like see people moving in and see people caring and see people, trying to make it something.
That's beautiful.
Because it was just nothing for so long. It was just an open field.
Definitely something now. So what would you say is the number one lesson or piece of advice that you would have for small business, either people who are operating small businesses, people thinking about starting a business? Mm-hmm. What would you say is your number one?
Number one lesson or piece of advice? Honestly, there are so many smart things I could probably tell you that, like, buy the books. But I think if you're going to start up your own business, you have to believe in what you're doing. Uh-huh. Like, you have to be passionate about it. Because you're going to work endless hours, especially in the beginning, and it's going to be so hard, and there's going to be days that you love it, and I don't think I could have made it this long had I not just been completely in love with growing food and passionate about working outside and, being a part of the community, and there's just no way I could do this if I wasn't.
If the fire wasn't in there. That's awesome.
So I think you have to have that.
Very cool. Where do you see this going the next 10 years? Where what's your dream? What's your vision?
Well, I see in 10 years just getting better at what I do. Mm-hmm. 'Cause there's just so much to learn, and getting more efficient, through the years, and we're getting there slowly but surely. So I look forward to that. Just kind of nailing down some of the practices, and honestly taking a little bit more time off. Yeah. So I want to play more, and I think I can get there is after we get.
Yeah. You don't want to wear out. I have that challenge myself because I've been running this company for 7 or 8 years now. Mm-hmm. And a big part of me getting re-energized for it was this podcast, right? Because I get to meet so many interesting folks from different walks of life, and it's helpful to the company, but it's also really authentic to what I'm doing, and it's allowed me to get that, and keep that enthusiasm going, because I have seen people burn out because you just end up it's just too much, and humans are funny creatures.
Yeah. And I don't think it takes much to get re-energized, you know. I just think you need to protect yourself, and if you are passionate about something, know that that's a gift, and know that you have to nourish it, and
ride the lightning, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Mel, you have been an amazing guest, and I really appreciate you telling the story of your urban farm. Yeah. High five.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Take care. Thank you for listening to Small Business War Stories. If you enjoy the show, Share it with a friend, or you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our blog at blog.proven.com. If you have an idea for us, we'd love to hear it. Please email us at podcast@proven.com. See you next time. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.